This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
All right, now, thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by MyBookie.ag. I'm your host, Tate, and first off, happy Labor Day to everyone out there. Labor Day is one of those holidays that are kind of bittersweet because it's like it's a day off. And yes, I'm working on Labor Day, but it's the day that, it's like the day off. So it's like, great, a 3-day weekend. But then it's also the tough thing because you realize like, this is the last holiday of the summer. Summer's over. But then you look over and you're like, wow, it's the football season though. So it's kind of like heaven and hell all at the same time because the warm days of summer are going to be behind us and you got to prepare for the fall and winter. But who's not excited about football starting back up? I know I am. So just thinking about Labor Day just gets me amped up about the start of the season, sad about summer, but then what we're going to talk about today is just a big part of that about this Labor Day weekend. Labor Day weekend is the first week of the college football season. And this season, the way it starts off, it did not disappoint. We're going to talk about the big game here. But we're going to talk about that Alabama Florida State game. We're going to cover the Michigan game. We're going to talk a little bit about Ohio State and a few other of the top 25 and also some of the scores just in case you missed some of those just to bring you up to date. So the big game was number 1 Alabama against Florida State, in which it was set up to be a barn burner. I thought these two teams were evenly matched up. I thought whoever came out of this really sets themselves up for a shot at the national championship, or at least it puts them in a good place as far as making the playoffs go. And when you look at this game, it's a tale of two halves. When you look at the very first half, it's a very close game. You're looking at, it's a 10-7 game. Alabama's up. Florida State is hanging right there with them. And, you're expecting this game to come down to the wire because it's just looking like these two teams are just evenly matched up. Then a few crazy things in this game is over. You have a block punt, a block kick, and then they also lose. Florida State loses DeAndre Francois, their starting quarterback, and this game is wrapped up. And this is a devastating injury because it turned out that Francois is done for the year. And Florida State, who had national championship hopes, I have to say they're over now. 1, with the loss to Alabama, and 2, losing your starting quarterback. I no longer look at them as the top team in the ACC. As that's just more than there's too big of a hurdle. They have to run the table and be perfect, and I just don't see them going through, the likes of Clemson and some of the other teams on their schedule like Miami. with their backup quarterback. The quarterback, that's the one position that no team can take a risk on losing. And unfortunately, Florida State lost their starting quarterback in the very first game of the year. Is just devastating. Now you look at Alabama, and it's roll tide. Alabama looked like Alabama. They look great on offense. They look fantastic on defense. And the special teams literally won the game for them. You know, you look at the block punt, the block field goal. Then you look at the defense with I think they had like two or three interceptions. They were rolling. Once they started building, and that's the thing with Alabama. You can't lose momentum to Alabama, and that's exactly what happened with Florida State. Once they had that turnover on the kick return, they were losing momentum. Then they lost their quarterback, and it was over. It was just not a competitive game anymore. And when I look at Alabama, it's kind of crazy to look at a team this early in the season and say, they have to be the hands-on favorite to not only make the playoffs and win the SEC, but make the playoffs and win the national championship. But they are, without question, the hands-on early part of this season's favorite. I don't see anyone else after week one that I was that impressed with that I could say, wow, this is a team that can contend with Alabama to win the national championship. So it's definitely going to be an interesting season because you got to see how Auburn does and a few other teams. But I just and also see if Florida State can kind of right the ship. And, that's a great segue to the second game that I was really excited about. That's the second game that I was super excited about was that Michigan Wolverines versus Florida State. Not Florida State, but Florida. And this was a scary game for both of these teams because the winner just really sets himself up to be, in a great place. And the loser, their playoffs hopes are just dashed. And I tell you what, Michigan looked fantastic. As the game went on, Michigan looked stronger and stronger, and they were rolling. In the end, Michigan won 33-17. You could see how Michigan still, because the team is very young, there's a lot of room for improvement. Michigan will, as the first game goes, they were impressive as they could possibly be. But when I watched them on offense and defense, I could see how as the season rolled on, they're going to get tougher, more game experience, more battle tested. They're going to be a lot more of a cohesive unit. Michigan can make a run at this. They have the schedule. They have the young players. And yes, they lost a lot of players to the draft this past year, but they replaced a lot of guys with some really talented players. They have a shot. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with Michigan over the next few weeks because I do see a lot of room for them to really roll. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some other games that I thought were really great, and then I'm also going to go through and talk about the scores. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Ever since I started hosting this podcast, people have come to me for advice. Hey, who are you taking this week in the big game? Are you taking the Patriots or the Steelers? Or Chicago or Detroit? Or who do you have in the big fight? Well, let me tell you this. Before I tell them who I have in the game this week or the fight this weekend, I tell them that it's just as important as where you're betting as who you're betting on. And I always use MyBookie.ag. MyBookie.ag has been around for years. They got a solid reputation. And the most important thing is they pay you out fast. There's nothing worse than winning a big, betting on making the right decision, picking the right team to win, and then you have to jump through all these hoops and hurdles to get paid. You don't have these issues with MyBookie.ag. Their payouts is as fast as within 2 days. And that's what I like best about them is I can place my bet, get my win, and collect my money. They have in-game, live betting, and some of the most rewarding perks in the business. They also have an all-new mobile site that makes wagering on the go a breeze. Join now, and MyBookie will match your deposit with a 100% bonus. Use promo code GSMC Sports to activate this offer. Visit MyBookie.ag today. You play, you win, you get paid.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we're back, and we were just talking about the Florida State-Alabama game, and then we also touched on the Michigan-Florida State game and how these two games are really going to shape, kind of the picture of the national championship. Another game that I thought gave a little window into the national championship is the Ohio State-Indiana game. And I know you look at it and you say, Ohio State, Indiana, how could that mean? That's even though everyone knows that Ohio State is a major contender for the playoffs. How did this say this was a game that kind of shaped the picture of the national championship? And when I look at this game, I watched this game, and Ohio State won the game 49-21. It wasn't the 49 points that concerned me about Ohio State. The offense looked spectacular. But what did concern me is how Indiana really was able to move the ball on Ohio State. They were able to move the ball a lot better than I was expecting. Ohio State came in rusty, and I know it looks weird. 49-21, Ohio State looked rusty. But when the Indiana quarterback, Richards, threw for 410 yards, 40 of 65 with 3 touchdowns. You shouldn't be able, if a lot of people look at Ohio State as just as strong as Alabama, but it didn't show. You can't give up that many yards and that many touchdowns to an Indiana quarterback. And Cobbs, the wide receiver, he had 11 catches for 49 yards and a touchdown. There's holes in that defense, and I know this is the first game of the year, but you cannot, if you're giving up that many yards to Indiana, how are you gonna? I mean, it has to get fixed, because how are you gonna stop an Ohio State? I mean, not Ohio State, but an Alabama or someone like that, a Clemson. Those are high-powered offenses. You cannot give up those kind of points. So that's the one thing I was definitely concerned about with Ohio State. So that's just giving me my take on that game. And then there's another game that everyone was talking about, and that was the game of Texas A&M versus UCLA, in which UCLA won 45-44. And there was a lot of people in Texas that was highly upset. I mean, people were talking, and administrators were talking openly, that Kevin Sumlin needs to be fired. After the first game, he needs to be fired. And the reason why they were saying that is, in the third quarter, Texas A&M had a 34-point lead. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize when you're talking about football, momentum. We talked about a little bit about momentum in the Alabama game. But once that ball starts rolling, it's hard to stop it. And I kind of felt like Texas A&M took their feet off the gas a little bit, and that was just enough to let UCLA start rolling. And once the tide is rolling in, it is very hard to stop it. And the closer the score got, the tighter it seemed like Texas A&M kept playing. They got tighter and tighter. Next thing you know, you got a 45-44 loss, and everyone is calling for his Kevin Sumlin's job. And I got to tell you, I don't agree with that. I mean, he's been a good coach. Maybe not a great coach, but he's done a really good job with UCLA. I mean, with Texas A&M. But it's pretty much the way it sounds like it's on the wall at the mid-season, or if he loses a couple more games, he's going to be lost. Mid-season, he's going to be gone. But I don't think there's pretty much, short of running the table and making a national championship, the playoffs. I think that's the only thing that's going to save Kevin Sumlin from getting the axe now. I think the writing is just there. I don't agree with it. I think the alternative, it's not like they're gonna, sure, you can go out. There's some names that are out there that you can get that are great coaches, but that's a good team. They've done well. I know they faltered in normally they don't lose at the beginning of the year. They normally start out 5-0 and then falter down the stretch. But he's done a great job coaching, but I think it's over for him. Now, from here, we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about some of the other games and just kind of go down the line of some of the scores. We also had Stanford, who looked amazing against Rice. They won 62-7. Keller for Stanford went through for 253 yards and 2 touchdowns. Just looked spectacular. South Florida, they actually looked really good, winning 42-22. That's the second quarter that's when things just kind of went off the rails for San Jose State, where South Florida ran off 28 points in the second quarter. You cannot give up that many points in a quarter and survive. And it just ended up being a rout. We talked about that Ohio State game, which was 49-21. Oklahoma State, what a shocker. Oklahoma State won 59-24 to Tulsa. Oklahoma State, one of the things they're always known for is a high-powered offense. And Madison, their quarterback, really put it out there. He was 20 of 24, so he only 4 incompletions on the day. 303 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's not a bad day. So Oklahoma State is looking good. Washington beat Rutgers 30-14. Wisconsin. I don't know why I was going to go Utah State first. Wisconsin beat Utah State 59-0. And at one point, this game was 10-0 Utah State. And I was wondering, like, what the heck is going on with, Wisconsin? But by halftime, Wisconsin had brought it to 10-10. In the third, they ran off 28 points. In the fourth, they ran off 21 points. Alex for Wisconsin threw for 244 yards and 3 touchdowns as they won easily. They cruised after that. Once they picked up momentum, they cruised 59-10. We mentioned before the Florida State-Alabama game. Alabama won 24-7. Florida State losing Francois, that is just devastating. I think that really ruins a very, interesting season with Florida State, where they were truly poised to contend for the national championship, and now I no longer look at them as a national championship contender. And I could be proven wrong, but I don't think so. You had USC, they won 49-31. This was a game. They beat Western Michigan. Western Michigan is a decent team, but this game was neck and neck all the way through. It was pretty much even all the way to the fourth quarter, when USC finally ran off 28 points. But these are the kind of games where you're looking at USC as a national championship contender, a playoff contender. You can't have games where you're giving up 31 points to the likes of Western Michigan. And Western Michigan's a good team, and I don't want to have everyone hitting me up on Twitter talking about what a horrible statement I've made by disrespecting Western Michigan, but they shouldn't be on the level with USC. Now, these next two games were a little close to my heart. I grew up in Northeast Ohio, right by Kent State University, and I went to college at the University of Akron, and it was not a pretty day for my alumni. And Akron U and Kent State are just right beside each other. So when you're at Akron U, you go to Kent State to party a little bit. People from Kent State come to Akron to party. Well, this was no party. Clemson versus Kent State, 56-3, and it started out rough. First quarter, they ran off 20. It was 21-0. By halftime, it was 28-3. And it just kept on rolling the rest of the way for Clemson. Kent State never had a chance. But my Zips, my alma mater, the Zips, played Penn State. Number 6 Penn State won 52-0. This game was over last week. This just was not a competitive game at all. So there was annihilation there. So another game we're gonna move on to is number 7 Oklahoma won 57-7 with UTEP. And Baker Mayfield with Oklahoma threw for 19 of 20, one incompletion for the day, 19 of 20. 329 yards and 3 touchdowns. 134 of them went to Mark Andrews, and 1 touchdown. Mark Andrews got one touchdown. We talked about that number 11 Michigan beating number 17 Florida 33-7. A team that they're always good, but I wasn't really considering them as a true contender. But a team that looked really good, granted against Georgia Southern, was Auburn. Number 12 Auburn just looked spectacular as they won 41-7. Georgia against Appalachian State. Guys, do not sleep on Appalachian State. They are a really good program. And Georgia came in and looked strong. They won 31-10 as the number 15 Georgia won against Appalachian State. Number 16 Louisville, in a really close but competitive game, won 35-28. A team that I am excited about this year. Granted, they played Bethune-Cookman, but Miami won 41-13. Looked spectacular. Definitely interested in seeing what Miami looks like against a little stiffer competition. Bethune was not really. It was a glorified scrimmage there. South Florida looked good. They beat Stony Brook 31-17 as the number 19 South Florida won. Kansas State beat Central Arkansas 20-55. The game that was interesting was Maryland and Texas. That was a good game. I don't know if you saw this game, but both teams looked very impressive. Matter of fact, Texas at one point, the game was starting to get away from them. They ran off 20 points in the third. Maryland had to come back. They ran off 14 in the fourth to win the game. But both of these teams, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what these two guys will look like going forward. And then the last game I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about a couple more games. Washington State beat Montana State 31-0. LSU beat Brigham Young or BYU 27-0. Virginia Tech, that was a good game. That Virginia Tech West Virginia game was a barn burner. Both teams look spectacular. I am truly looking forward to seeing these two teams as the season goes on, because both of these teams looked like they both were getting stronger and stronger as the game went on. Virginia Tech ended up winning 31-20. And then the last game, talk about barn burner. If you didn't see this game, go back and take a look at this game. Number 25 Tennessee versus Georgia Tech, 42-41. There wasn't really after like the first quarter, there wasn't a boring moment left in this game. It was like neither one of these teams really had an answer for each other. They just kept going, trading blows back and forth, and it was just a spectacular game. And that concludes the scores. When we come back, we're going to talk about the rankings for this week. Stay tuned, and we'll be back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, we're back. And we were just talking about, we were just giving scores and highlights from this week's college football. And we talked a little bit about what happened with Texas A&M and UCLA. And now we're going to go with this week's rankings. We're not going to cover everything, but we're going to give you that. We'll give you, let's say, the top 10 or 15. And then we'll wrap things up. And we're going to be talking about the AP poll. Actually, I'll compare the AP and coaches poll because it's a little interesting. At number 1 in both polls, Alabama is number 1 in both polls. They got 60 of the 61 votes in the AP poll. Ohio State got 1 vote for one first place vote. In the coaches poll, Ohio State got 2 votes and Clemson got 3. Alabama got 60. So it was a clear cut who's number 1. Ohio State is number 2. Clemson is number 3. Penn State is 4 on both polls. Number 5 in the AP poll is Oklahoma. Number 5 is USC. In the coaches poll, they just kind of switched places there. Number 6 in the AP poll had USC, and the coaches poll had Oklahoma. They both agree that Washington was the number 7 team. Michigan is now number 8, which I totally agree with that placement. I would even put Michigan a little higher. Wisconsin is number 9. In the AP poll, the number 9 was Florida State, where they dropped 6 places. So at number 9, AP has Wisconsin. Coaches poll has Florida State. I don't know if I quite agree with that. Number 10 in the AP poll was Oklahoma. No, in the coaches poll was Oklahoma State. And in the AP poll, number 10 was Florida State. I don't know if I would have dropped them 7. With that loss in the AP poll, Florida State dropped 7 spots. That was a bit of a shocker. I'm gonna just stick with the AP poll the rest of the way here. I just wanted to show you the coaches poll and the AP poll, but going down the rest of the way, in the AP poll, Oklahoma State was number 11, LSU was number 12. Auburn dropped after looking. I thought they looked spectacular, but they dropped 1 spot to 13. Stanford stayed the same at 14. Georgia went 15. Miami moved up 2 spots to number 16. My dark horse that could really have a shot at making the playoffs, Louisville, is number 17. Virginia Tech, 18. Kansas State, 19. Washington State is 20. South Florida is at number 20. And then Florida, who dropped 5 places down to number 22. That's kind of interesting. And Florida almost, in the coaches poll, almost dropped all the way out. They dropped all the way down to number 24. TCU broke into the poll. They weren't ranked. Now they're at 23. Notre Dame, who was not ranked, broke into both polls with their win. Notre Dame is number 24 on the AP poll, number 25 in the coaches poll, and Tennessee rounded out the top 25 in the AP poll, with Tennessee being number 25. Now, there's some interesting that first off, that wraps up this week's highlights and scores. It also wraps up giving you the top 25 rankings. Now, what are the interesting games that are kind of coming up for this week here? I'm looking at, Miami at Arkansas State, and still not really anything. I'm looking at Michigan versus Cincinnati. I just want to see if they improve, how much will they improve. I'm looking forward to seeing that Louisville, North Carolina game, because I really want to see truly how strong Louisville is. Alabama, they have Fresno State. I don't think Fresno State has a chance at all in that game at all. The big game that there's two big games. There's a few big games here. The first big game that I'm truly looking forward to, though, is that Auburn versus Clemson. That's a game where both of these teams, it's gut check time. This is the show. Clemson wins this game, they're in a catbird seat, and they're in a really good place as far as the playoffs. It's kind of surprising to see so many big games this early in the year. But that Clemson Auburn game, look out for that. That's going to be Saturday. Georgia Notre Dame, important game for Notre Dame. I don't think Notre Dame has a true shot, but that is an important game. If Notre Dame's gonna to make a run and kind of get their coach off the hot seat, this is an important game. But the biggest game of them all, I'm really curious about Oklahoma versus Ohio State. I did not think Ohio State looked that impressive. Oklahoma did look impressive. I want to see what kind of leap Ohio State makes from week 1 to week 2. That's the marquee game. The kickoff is at 4:30. Man, Pacific time. That's going to be. I'm really looking at this one. If I had to pick right now, I'm still gonna go with Ohio State just because Ohio State has so much talent. But if they give up the points and the yardage like they did last week, or this past Saturday, Oklahoma's gonna get them. Just wanted to talk to you guys and give you just kind of my. This is wrapping up my college football week 1 preview. Thank you for listening and tuning in. I want you guys all enjoy the last of the Labor Day weekend, and to all, have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.